Alain, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, very good. I wanted to say about your show, Helstrom. I received the
Hmm.
first 5 episodes in advance, and I was watching those,
Oh,
and it was
good.
an incredible, incredible show. And then I got to see the last 5 episodes, and boy, does it even takes even more turns. Such a fun sense of you've got such a sense of character on the show. So why don't you start? Tell me a little bit about your character, how you went about playing him, and maybe just a little bit about
Mhm.
what the show is about.
Well, Chris is the I would imagine he's like the best friend of Anna Hellstrom, which is one of the main characters. They grew up together. They met each other in the foster care program, and like any other, when I was doing research on the character and researched the background, I understand that if you come from a system, the foster care system, especially if the character is coming from trauma, there's usually a lot of trust issues that they carry with them, and the fact that they've become really close, and in some ways they've become each other's chosen family, really is an insightful fact that myself as an actor would take. So in that sense, they grew up together. They started the business together, a very successful auction house, and that's where we meet them. And there's a rhythm, there's a life that they created for them. And in that first episode that people will watch is that it's that sense of normalcy that they do, and they do other things besides sell antiquities. They have this you know side business, maybe that's the best way to explain it, is that they feel the need that it's important for them to justify the death of or deaths of very, very terrible people in this world. And that really certainly stems from whatever past they might have, in the foster care system. And so that's where we meet them, is that sort of rhythm and that life that they created for themselves. And as the series unfolds, you kind of get a sense of what the story is about, and it's really about the family, her biological family, and the conflicts that arise when the brother Damon and Anna finally meet. Excuse me, when they finally meet, and the reasons why they meet, and they have to deal with a lot of the past transgressions that their family lineage has created for them. Obviously it's a Marvel show. It's based on the Marvel comics, Helstrom, Son of Satan, and it is a very creative take on that comic book. What was the other question? It was something about preparation, I think,
I've
or
heard you talk about how you play the character quite differently than you are. You know, he
mm,
walks a specific way. He's very put together. The suits are
right,
incredible. What do you lean
yeah.
into when you're playing that?
You know, I like you said, I've said it many times, and Chris is a very well put together person. I am not. I live in chaos, and he would be the type of person that knows exactly where things are, and if something is misplaced, he will know. And it's very. I think it's having an auction house and having all those inventory and all that stuff, and having to know how to clean up the mess that Anna puts herself in is there. That's who Chris is. I what I find that I can relate to with Chris is that there's that loyalty factor. I'm a very loyal person to a fault sometimes, and to understand the truth behind that, and understanding that a lot of the loyalty comes from caring for, or being in Chris's sense, obsessing over um, the control, and making sure that the person that he cares for, he trusts, who he loves, is always protected. And that's what I leaned on, in terms of that connection, and understanding why people can be so loyal, to and sometimes, like I said, into a fault. But yeah, those are the things I start with, and after I create that bridge, is understanding the reasons why he does certain things. You know, why is he dressed so well? What's the reasoning behind that? And I've always felt that you're either running away from something or you're running towards something. And I think in the instance of Chris, I think he's running away from the life that he lived during foster care and all that trauma and all that, you know, all that poverty, everything that he has now created for himself is the complete opposite of what he was. And I can certainly relate to that too. I mean, being an immigrant here, it's like, you know what your past is like, and you try to, you know, your best to not push it away, but rather find the opposite of that. And for me, I was running towards that as opposed to running away from it. I think for Chris, he was running away from his past and doesn't want to maybe deal with it.
I've been watching a lot of your appearances, media appearances. I watched your San Diego Comic-Con at home, New York Comic-Con at home.
Yeah.
This seems like a very, very special group, a special cast, creator Paul as well too, and reading that you hadn't known anybody prior to coming in. What do you enjoy most about working with this group, and particularly Sydney?
From the jump, I was, you know, fully connected with Sydney and Beth. They were the first people that I met on set. It was like the first day of doing the camera test for wardrobe, and we did a table read too. And I went into a room with Beth and Sid, and they were just sitting down. I'm like, oh, I think that's them. Like I had no idea who they were going to be. And I sat down, and it was just instant. And there is this, there's a work ethic that they all have. They all want to do better and be better and to be able to be there for their castmates. I thought that was, you know, when you have people like that truly care about the work, you can't help but be part of the team. And I think that starts off with Paul. I mean, I remember talking to Paul during the character session or the character meeting, you know, 3 weeks before we had to shoot. And he said that I'm only bringing people on that are obviously great at what they do, but also I want to make sure that their attitudes and their sensibilities will match. You know, he wanted people that were, you know, 5-tool players to use a baseball analogy, because World Series is happening right now. But he also wanted to make sure that the personalities fit, and that that we are people of good character. And you know, it just shows. I mean, we got along so well, all of us. You know, I made it a point to create like a WhatsApp thread, a group text, and I made sure that, you know, we were trying to do something every Saturday. You know, I loved putting that stuff together. I just felt like, you know, it's something you should do, and we did it, and it was easy, it was organic. But as far as working with Sydney Lemmon, you know, I obviously did my research on who she was and who she is and where she comes from and everything else, because I'm crazy like that. But yeah, we got along instantly. It was easy. It was so easy. She's got this beautiful heart and you know, exceptional talent. And the biggest thing was that she was super humble and was really curious about me and who I was, and wasn't, you know, was very present. And every time we talked and every time we met, and we ended up spending a lot of time at the beginning. You know, we went to coffee, ate some sushi, went to watch a movie, just kind of building that relationship. But again, it wasn't forced. It just felt really organic. And we genuinely liked being around each other. So that stuff was easy.
This show's very interesting in terms of thematically. It could be read into in a number of ways. And I'm curious, as a person yourself, do you tend to be skeptical about things? Do you believe in things? Do you believe in demonic possession?
Oh man, different periods of my life I did, and then there's different periods of my life where I didn't. Right now, this version of Elaine is saying that I think I don't think, I don't fall too far into the demonic kind of mythology of things. I observe it more in a more intellectual way, that there are reasons why these things exist in terms of the stories behind them, and what they mean to humanity and the society at large. So I think I approach it more on an intellectual level, as opposed to something in a more spiritual or more literal way of understanding what those mythologies could be, or superstitions or religion, or whatever you might call it. But I think, I mean, yeah, when I was younger, I was frightened of everything that I would read or hear about, and everything else. And growing up in the Philippines, there were certainly a lot of superstitious things that were impressed upon us as children that frightened the hell out of us. And we could go up and down the folklore, legends of like the aswang or the duende, and you mix that in with the Catholic religion, and it just makes it even more real. So yeah, certainly my early years when I was younger, that's certainly something I pulled into, or got pulled into. But the older I've gotten, it's more like, oh, I understand the reasons behind it.
Also, the perfect show to be coming out right now in time for Halloween. We're going to be
Oh,
doing
it's
it a bit.
perfect.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah,
be doing
it's
it a bit
great.
differently this year. But do you have a best memory from a Halloween past, a costume?
I don't know if it's a memory, but more of like an embarrassing situation. We weren't very, well off. We weren't financially, in a position to be always buying certain things. But I remember from like second grade to sixth grade, I wore the same costume, and it was a ghost costume because it was the easiest thing. I just remember wearing like a bed sheet with, like the classic thing, and that was it. That was my costume all the way to like sixth grade. So I don't know. That's the sharpest memory that I have of Halloween. But I absolutely love Halloween. I love everything about Halloween. I love, the spooky stuff. Even the color, black and orange. Like I love everything that Halloween brings. And it also is a reminder of, last half of the year, which is my birthday's in September, and then it becomes Halloween, and the weather is great. Thanksgiving happens, and then Christmas and New Year. So it's the beginning of all those holidays, and it always makes me feel good.
This show, obviously, the diversity present in the show
Mhm.
stands out in that it's not a subject matter necessarily, but it is there. We have a queer character and characters from many different backgrounds. Does this show align with your vision in terms of the work that you're doing with Them Two Productions and sort of what you stand for?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's important to understand and recognize that the world is a very colorful place, I think, and it's a very diverse place. And when you come into a place as an immigrant, for example, your perspective is a little different. I come from a country where everyone looks like me, and whatever that normal is just normal. But coming to the United States, you immediately are put into a box and are immediately considered as the quote unquote other. And I never, again, having both perspective of what being the norm is and being not the norm was really mind blowing for me. And so growing up, you start to understand your place in this culture, in this society. And then obviously you start to go, well, what about me? How do I fit in this world? So shows like Helstrom and other shows who are striving for diversity is great. But I think the most important thing is that diversity isn't just a quota, so to speak, but rather the quality of those characters and the quality of those jobs. What are they? Is it just to appease the the superficialness of the appearance of being diverse? So for something like Hellstrom, where there is a diversity there, but the fact that it isn't spoken of, but rather just as is, I think is fantastic. But at the same time, I do understand that it's not that black and white. There is nuance to this thing, and that having playing a gay character is very nuanced. Like I can never ever speak on authority of what that is, but I could speak on my experiences as an Asian American, and seeing how representation has mattered for my community and what I have seen growing up. And it's finding that balance is something that I certainly have championed in my production company, is trying to find stories that align with what I want to share and what I feel is important to share, but also to be aware of the all the other stories that are not being told. And I think that Helstrom, Hulu, and everybody at Disney has been doing a great job, pushing that, keep pushing. It's not perfect, and things don't change overnight, but you're always going to get some kind of backlash. But at the end of the day, I feel like the direction you mentioned earlier is just the direction you feel like you can connect with. Absolutely, 1000%.
And what does it mean to you that, for example, for the New York Comic Con panel, you all were wearing vote shirts? You were all aligned in that.
Yeah.
You could read in political allegories into the show as well too, but what does it mean for the show to be coming out at a time like this?
I think it's important. I think it's our duty to express our vote and express our opinion and thoughts about our country and everything else. I think, it's, again, there's no longer nuance. It's difficult to have a conversation about, your political affiliations. It's just everyone's so tight and so wound up. And I think for me, one of the things we wanted to make sure during that New York Comic Con is that we tell everybody that we advertised basically to everybody that you should vote. If you want things to be different, vote. It's one of those things where you really have only one currency in the political system as a citizen, is to vote. And it boggles my mind, because I have a history degree, and I understand how difficult it was for people to fight for that right to vote. And for people to not exercise the right to vote is baffling to me. And especially coming from the Philippines, where the government, the history of the government has been very checkered, and it's we came to the United States because of the democracy, of the freedom to do what we feel like is necessary to achieve our dream. I think I'm still I have a very romantic sense of the American dream still, and and having the pride to be an American, to be a citizen here, to vote, I think is important. And one of the things that we also touched on during the New York Comic Con was mental health. The NAMI organization, that's what we really truly believe in. And it makes sense that it ties with the show, because there is a lot of trauma involved in doing a lot of research, the character development that we did, or at least for me, that you understand that mental health is a part of it's at least in many different communities, it's not a subject matter that is it's rarely talked about. You talk about religious spiritual health, talk about your physical health, but rarely do you talk about your mental health. And so that's something we all kind of went, we would love to, at the very least, specifically during this time of stress. And a lot of people are financially stricken by the pandemic and the effects of that, and obviously the political climate that's happening now, the civil unrest, like that's a lot to deal with. And I've made it a point to call friends of mine just to say hi. I mean, we sometimes need that. And so yeah, I thought it was important that we at the very least say vote and check up on yourself, check up on your friends, and for their mental status.
So you've been very busy at this time. Helstrom, Paper Tigers, them two, you're still doing work behind the camera. Gaming, you're very much into gaming as well. I'm curious, what have you had a chance, what shows during this time in particular? I've looked a lot to television to be a comfort, and a lot of the things I'm watching have been sort of very reflective of that. What have you found at this time? What has interested you? What are some of your corn streams?
Okay, So at the beginning of the pandemic, I binge watched the entire Marvel movie,
Yeah.
filmography, but I watched it in their not chronological order in terms of when they were released, but rather the time dates of every movie, which was fascinating to watch. And then I started watching a bunch of like old like Indiana Jones movies. There's something I'm working on that's along the same lines as a writer. And then I started reading a ton of books. I read several books by Malcolm Gladwell and a few other independent writers, I should say, from Singapore that I really enjoyed. And then now recently I watched Lovecraft,
Yeah.
which is a phenomenal show. Jamie Chung in that one episode blew my freaking mind. She was absolutely beautiful, and it's just amazing. Um, and then just rewatching old stuff, man. Like I'm a big fan of David Fincher, so I just watched Gone Girl recently, and going through his entire filmography as well. So that's it. I don't stream a lot of shows. It's because I get so exhausted by the end of it that I need a break. And so, yeah, it's very rarely do I, binge something. Oh, I did recently binge Helstrom. So there you go.
Yes.
Watched it twice.
Yeah. So there you go. That's my final question is, people are really starting to respond to the show, binging it, watching it,
Yeah.
looking for clues in it. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on very early on where later on I went, oh, okay, I could see where that's going. What are you most excited about for an audience to connect with the show?
I really think that Helstrom is a show that deserves a second watch. And what I mean by that is you watch it for the drama, the supernatural, the effects, the action that happens. But if you watch it the second time, there are so many things that you may have missed that is part of the mythology of the comic books that I personally, even doing it, I didn't catch until this last time I binged watch all the way through. Um, so I think I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the people who are deep, hardcore comic book fans to look at this with a much more unskeptical eye, I suppose. Something that just kind of, if you just take a look at it, you can start to see how deep and how layered the writing was that Paul and his staff and the staff of writers that were placed in there to cultivate. I think it's in there. It's right underneath the surface. And once I feel a few people get a chance to really do a deep dive like that, I think that's when it starts to really lay its foundations with the fans. So that's what I'm really excited about. I'm excited for that.
So put your thinking caps on, get your magnifying glasses out, and look carefully, look closely.
Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs in there that I certainly missed. And upon the second rewatch, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Then there's a lot of springboards that should we be blessed to have a second season, I think those things start to get explored. And then you're going to rewatch the first season again going, oh, it was already there since the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in that first episode where I'm just like, oh, huh, I didn't even think about that. I won't say what those things are, but I'll let the audience figure that out.
Right on. Thank you. It was great
Yes.
speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.